Good morning, sisters, and welcome to Promises and Attributes, episode 27, Charity Part 2. So, if you remember last week, we talked about charity being the pure love of Christ, and that pure love of Christ meaning a bunch of different things. The pure love that Christ has for us, the pure love that we can have for Christ, and then the pure love of Christ that we emulate towards other people. And that's the one that I would like to focus on a lot more today. And I think that is the hardest part, right? I loved what Jeffrey R. Holland said about Christ's love, like that perfect love, it only existed with Christ. So part of this whole charity thing is having charity for ourselves as well, that we need to cut ourselves some slack. Charity only existed in its perfect form in the form of Jesus Christ. And so we need to give ourselves permission to be human, to be to fail and then just keep trying, because this is one of those things where we are definitely going to fail over and over and over again. And at least I know I do. So I just wanted to start out with a quote by Marvin J. Ashton. You know, as I think about what charity looks like and what charity is, I love the way that Brother Ashton describes it. Many of you have probably heard this quote. It's a pretty well-known one, but the second part of it is one that I hadn't ever heard until just recently, and I think it is a really valuable thing too. So he says, perhaps the greatest charity comes when we are kind to each other, when we don't judge or categorize someone else, when we simply give each other the benefit of the doubt or remain quiet. Charity is accepting someone's differences, weaknesses, and shortcomings, having patience with someone who has let us down, or resisting the impulse to become offended when someone doesn't handle something the way we might have hoped. Charity is refusing to take advantage of another's weakness and being willing to forgive someone who has hurt us. Charity is expecting the best of each other. Oh, how I love that quote. There are so many good, concrete things about how we can cultivate this pure love of Christ that he showed us so perfectly in our lives with regards to other people. Let's just highlight a few of the things he said, and then I want to read you the second part of his quote because it is also so good. Accepting differences. Okay, so, I jumped ahead. When we don't judge or categorize someone else. How often do we do that, right? How often, at least for me, this is a real struggle for me. How often do I just assume things about someone when I don't really truly know who they are? When I was teaching school, I taught with this woman. I taught year round, and so we had A, B, C, and D track. And this woman and I were on B track together, and she was the gifted teacher. She taught the ALPS program down in Jordan School District, back when it was Jordan School District. Anyway, and when I first met her, I hated her. I didn't like her at all. She rubbed me the wrong way. She did all these annoying things, and I just had a super hard time with her. But she reached out to me, and I was a brand new teacher. It was my first full year as a teacher. I had taken over at the end of school year for a teacher who got fired. So I taught for a couple months, and then she came to our school and we knew each other. So I was brand new. She reached out to me. She mentored me. She just was so kind to me. And I realized how wrong I had been about her because I had judged her, categorized her based on a snap judgment at the very beginning of meeting her. And I am so glad that she reached out to me because I would have missed out so much on an amazing person. And she retired the year that I left to move up here to Perry and for us to start our family. She gave me a little sign that says, "Friends by chance, sisters by choice." And that's how she thought of me, and that's how I thought of her by the end. And I think, what greater charity is there than that? to truly become sisters in the true meaning of that word. As I say that, I think about my own sister, and our relationship has been an example to me of what it means to have true charity, because we just love each other through all of the messiness and through all of the craziness. And we talk on the phone and she's yelling at her kids on one end and I'm yelling at my kids on the other end. And we don't ever judge each other. We just love each other and we just know each other well enough to give the benefit of the doubt. I don't know how to cultivate that with other people as well as I do with her, but I think part of it is just coming to really know someone and to really see them and to try and to reach out and to see who they really actually are, and not let our snap judgments or our first impressions dictate how we respond to people. Anyway, he goes on. He says, we simply give each other the benefit of the doubt or remain quiet. Isn't that a powerful part of charity? Sometimes charity requires us to just bite our tongue, to be humble enough to recognize that we might not understand the full situation. And that is hard, especially when someone does something to us that is painful or difficult. He says, charity is accepting someone's differences, weaknesses, and shortcomings. When you think about it, we want that from other people, don't we? Don't we want people to look at us and accept us and our weaknesses and our shortcomings? Sister Eubank gave her talk in October conference in the women's session about by union of feeling we gain power with God, which is so great. But she talks about that mercy, and hopefully we'll have a chance, maybe not in this video, maybe we'll have to do a charity part 3, but I want to talk more about this idea of mercy too and how that applies to charity. But she says, she was quoting the prophet Joseph Smith, and he said that he was going to preach mercy. Supposing that Jesus Christ and the angels should object to us on frivolous things, what would become of us? So this idea of if Jesus judged us for every little thing that we did and every mistake that we made, what would be our fate? But that's not the case. That's not what he does. He doesn't judge us for every little tiny thing. He doesn't discount us for every mistake we make. He just knows that we're human. How many times have all of us put our foot in our mouth and said something we wish we had never said, or in a way that we're like, oh, in my head it didn't sound like that, but then it came out like that, right? How many times do we do that to other people and hope and pray that they have charity for us? We need to try and extend that same charity, because he talks here too, resisting the impulse to become offended or having patience with someone who has let us down. Those things are going to happen, but it is our job to try and, in those circumstances especially, exercise this charity that he's talking of here. Elder Bednar gave an excellent talk about the choice to be offended. That would be a good one to look up and study with this as well. Anyway, she says, and he just says, we must be merciful and overlook small things. I think it's interesting that sometimes the small things are the hardest things to overlook. Those little tiny things that people do to offend us, or those are hard to overlook sometimes. Sometimes it's easier to forgive the big things because we're really conscious of, like, this is a big offense, and so like we think about it and we recognize the need for it. But some of the smaller things, I think, just irritate us, but we don't recognize how important it is for us to forgive in those things too. Isn't charity so much about forgiveness? True forgiveness. He says charity is refusing to take advantage of another's weakness, being willing to forgive someone who has hurt us. Charity is expecting the best of each other. In my situation with my friend Charlie that I told you about earlier, I expected the worst of her from the beginning just because I had judged her. And charity is about expecting the best of each other. I think it's interesting in Matthew 25:40, Christ talks about, inasmuch as ye have done it unto one of the least of these, my brethren, ye have done it unto me. I think it is a really good soul-searching question to ask ourselves, who are the least in our minds? Who do we consider the least? Who do we look down on? And how do we treat them? That gave me some pause for thought when I thought on that idea. And I think that's a really valuable exercise. I want to finish with this last little piece from his quote. He says, "None of us need one more person bashing or pointing out where we have failed or fallen short. Most of us are already well aware of the areas in which we are weak. What each of us does need is family, friends, employers, and brothers and sisters who support us, who have patience to teach us, who believe in us, and who believe we're trying to do the best we can in spite of our weaknesses. Whatever happened to giving each other the benefit of the doubt? Whatever happened to hoping that another person would succeed or achieve? Whatever happened to rooting for each other? Sisters, are we having patience to teach others who may have hurt us, to talk to them about that? Are we believing in each other? Are we believing that everyone is just trying to do the best that they can? Are we giving each other the benefit of the doubt? Are we hoping that we succeed and achieve? Are we rooting for each other? I know we are sometimes. All of us do. And all of us are good at this sometimes. Is there an area where we could be just a little bit better? I know as we do, we will come closer to Christ, because this is the kind of love that he had.